Okay, what's up guys, Rishi here. Welcome to the podcast. Today our guest is Avishai Poorun. He is a telecommunication engineer, an AI and blockchain passionate. Let's get started. First of all, Avishai, let me know if I said your name right. Is that...
Yes, it's fine. It's fine.
Alright, so you are a telecommunication engineer. Tell me, what is a telecommunication engineer's job?
There's a diversified roles for a telecommunication engineer. Firstly, on a networking basis, we work on many infrastructures. We design a lot of components, and also we have to look a lot to our customers because everything is done on an international basis. Especially in Mauritius, where we work for Mauritius Telecom, Orange Business Service, you must ensure that everything on the network infrastructure is performing very good. And for a telecommunication engineer, he is not only stick, to networks. He has also a responsibility towards cloud computing, towards security, and even towards, the human resource. Usually, when we start our career, we will start by doing training. Firstly, it's also about how we create a network, how we design the infrastructure, we design the networks, and hence we connect it to a local area network. After this, the supervisor will tell you to go and implement it on a national basis. Sometimes you get simulation testing. Well, it is also applicable for software engineers. And telecommunication engineer, they usually design those networks in order to test the efficiency of the company itself, because not all companies use the same components. In the industry, everyone has his specifications towards telecommunication. For MTEL it is different, for Mauritius Telecom it is different, for private companies they usually have their own set of equipments, and also the rules and regulations that the telecommunication engineer has to abide and follow while working in the company itself.
Absolutely, yes. Everyone has his own network topology which they are using, I think. So it depends on their infrastructure and the kind of companies that their security levels that they want to set on the access. So that's a very good explanation, I think, of your job. Now, moving to the next question, I think it was about Dapps. So this is about decentralized application or leveraging the power of blockchain. Do you know a bit about what decentralized applications are?
Yes. Firstly, the interest of the apps lies itself in telecommunication, because everything is based on a network. The apps the applications that run on a P2P network, on a peer-to-peer network. It is not applications that are in a centralized database or server. It is not connected towards a single node. There are many nodes, and through these nodes there's an interaction. Everyone has to validate those information passing through those nodes, so that your information can be kept securely in a database. And the apps, the reason for using the app, the motivation, it is open source. So when you're using the apps, you can, if the company or if the developer permits you, you can have access to it. Because at the start, when they are doing beta testing or when they are launching their company or a crowd sale, they will not directly give you the open source. It is after a certain amount of time, after there's a success towards the project, or if the company is doing well, then they will give you open source. Because when you run the app, there is a problem of security. It is a large infrastructure. There's a lot of programming in it. There's a lot of we call it scalability. The greater the network, the more risky it is to maintain it. So the apps, they are very nice. This is the motivation behind blockchain. But for me personally, as a telecommunication engineer, the real motivation is that the apps they have a future towards transparency and security. And for me personally, the real interest is that when the code is open source, you can modify it, you can improve it, and yourself a software engineering student, you know that you get bug bounty opportunities, you can make your name, you can build up your career through open source projects. So this is a real motivation.
Yes.
It is a decentralized network. You get a lot of opportunities to build new products and services. Once you go into the blockchain industry, you're already in the open source world. You're already contributing. You're already making your name.
Absolutely. There's a lot of opportunities, especially for blockchain technologies right now, even in Mauritius. Now, the apps, as I understand it, it's very well integrated with the web as well. Ethereum has its own system for the apps, so it is also open source. It is on GitHub. Everyone can see the code, and a majority of its users can make changes to it. What's good about the apps, it can work with any front end, because you can even use Ethereum the app with Angular 4, Angular 5, and then you just have to make call to the backend. At the end of the day, you can host your front end on a decentralized storage such as Swamp or even IEFS. There are many other storage options, but these are the main ones at the moment. This is good for the apps. Again, with blockchain, what's really important is that all transactions are added irreversibly. That is, the integrity would never be lost in this case, and all transactions, that is transactions that has occurred in the past, are preserved for everyone to see. Nothing is deleted. Talking about deletion, let's talk about the threats to blockchain. What do you think are the threats to blockchain at this moment?
Blockchain itself, it is a new world, to people, in the tech industry. Like I said earlier, it is a very large network, a decentralized network. So, on a technical basis, there will be a lot of programming. And as developers, we usually do mistakes. And through beta testing, we can easily, identify them. But blockchain, the fact that it's a decentralized network, after launching your product, sometimes you do not pay attention to, small bugs. We usually look upon big bugs, the big issues in the programming. For example, you got 400 lines of code, you will always see, the codes that are linked to the logging, to the sign up, how, you are doing your transaction. And from the other side, there's also, an effect of the top management. You as a developer, you want to build the application in that way. The idea must be that you are abiding to the rules and regulations. Because blockchain, you cannot design an app just like this. There's a regulation behind this. Because when you're using that open source, you can fork it, you can modify it. But when you deploy it, there's a set of law, applicable to each country. Because you're making money through it. So sometimes, the top management also will try to influence that. Because not all companies want their product to be identified. You will start, for example, I will give you the best example. There's a blockchain engineer who was showing his experience about being a blockchain developer after running 2 ICUs. He personally said that sometimes you have to run fake ICUs. If you know what I mean. It is not about, stealing money. It's about, testing the environment. By just running a fake ICU, whether the job is being done, whether you're getting that experience, and whether you have the capacity as a young developer to identify the attacks in the nodes. Because the blockchain, the fact there's a problem of scalability. The greater the network, the greater is the risk. Attacks usually come from the front end also, but very rarely, because we as developers, we have the habit of checking the codes. But on the back end, you get a lot of difficulty.
At the same time, there are bugs that cannot be solved, even with blockchain and the web in general. There's of course DOS, denial of service. Now with blockchain there is direct DOS, which is double DOS. So what this does is attempt to freeze the server by flooding it with a high volume of traffic. In the case of an Ethereum node, it means that a high volume of invalid transactions are being sent to the server in order to flood that network.
Yes.
This prevents legitimate transactions from being processed. There are other threats such as the 51% attack, which is a bit more complex, which I won't cover for the sake of time. But
actually, we have a problem, pertaining to protocols, because every blockchain technology, whether Bitcoin, Ethereum, it has its own set of protocols. The proof of work, proof of concept, proof of burn. When you're designing the DApp, you have to follow the protocol. So it's like a fusion. You're doing your programming together with the protocol. So sometimes while you're doing the programming, to implement the protocol, you have to be very careful. There is a set of rules, because it's OAuth. Many developers usually follow that rule. So when you're designing the protocols, you're implementing it, you have to make sure that it is a step-by-step work pertaining to the developers, guide. Usually we follow a certain rules, as developers. We do not program from scratch, whether for a product or service. So I think the biggest challenge is about the protocols, because programming we will do beta testing. We will identify the errors, except when it is already deployed, and we have to do a lot of research. And I will not hesitate to say the best, hackers, ethical hackers, so as to identify it. But the real issue is about protocols. What protocol are you using? Whether it is viable, whether it is compatible with the product or service you're deploying, and whether you're respecting, the rules and regulation set up, by the respected organization, that govern, the blockchain technology industry.
With programming, there's a lot of frameworks, a lot of protocol. Even with networking, there are many protocols that need to be followed so that you can be compatible with existing technologies, and also because it would make your life easier as a developer. You don't have to kind of reinvent the wheel every time you're writing a new application. There are libraries, there are frameworks such as Angular that are already here. You can implement them into your own application. Yeah, that was the third question. I have a last question for you. It is about the websites, or rather the resources that you find most useful in your day-to-day life.
As an engineering student, you usually Google firstly, because we are students. This is the biggest facility for us. But a predilection for me would be, generally the company's website. The big companies, Google, OpenAI, Microsoft, I usually look up in their academy, because when those companies design their programs, they usually put resources, guides, manuals, and also tutorials. So I like to look directly to the reputed institutions who are building up new technologies. And if ever I have to look up at new resources, I usually Google it, just like this. If ever I found a website which is very interesting, then I will not hesitate to read it, or do some research. I may be diversified, on that basis. I do not have, a specific, website where, I will find all my resources, because, every week we have new websites, new, like we say, blogs, which, people design, organization design to put, information to help students, whether online academy, Udemy, Code Academy, Udacity, or whether companies like Google, Microsoft, or the new ones, Bailey. I will go directly into the websites and see whether I can use those information for my work or studies.
I think we covered both the side of the developer and the side of the telecommunication engineer.